we smacked our heads squarely against a wall, and growth more or less stopped. And it really was a head scratcher. We weren't doing anything different. We weren't losing customers, but we didn't know how to grow any further than what we had. Anything else, we were kind of getting ahead of our skis.
Welcome to the Building to Scale podcast, where we bring real entrepreneur stories that showcase the challenges and successes in building and scaling an entrepreneurial business. Our host, Jeff Chastain, is a business transformation coach with Admentis, where he coaches business leaders and their teams with a proven set of principles and tools, helping them gain clarity in and get more of what they want from their business. Make sure to stick around until the end of the show, and we will reveal how you can become our next guest.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back. This is Jeff Chastain with the Building to Scale podcast again, where I get the opportunity to speak with entrepreneurial business leaders, thought influencers, and really people in the business world that have gone through both successes and challenges here as they've grown and scaled their business over time. So today's guest that I have with me here is Val King of Whitehat Virtual Technologies down in Austin, Texas. And obviously, I've got some technology background myself these days, or in previous lives here. So it's fun talking to anybody in the technology realm there, and hopefully we'll stay a little bit above some of the geek speak here, and then actually talk a little bit about business today. But first off, just wanted to welcome you, Val, to the podcast, and thank you for coming on. And then just learn a little bit more about yourself and Whitehat Virtual Technologies here.
Great. Well, thank you for having me today. I'd really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you, and hopefully some of the things I say will resonate with other business owners. Some of the challenges they're having and had. I know I've got years of figuring this stuff out, so I like to share where I can, because I'm certainly learning from others as we continue to stumble into new problems.
Yeah, entrepreneurship is definitely a learning journey. That's always, I work a lot with high school kids, and that's one of those things. It's like they want to say, hey, as soon as I'm done with school, or as soon as I'm done with college degree, I'm done learning. It's like, no, you're really not. That's just the start here. If you stop learning, you're going to get lost. So this is always a learning journey. So tell me a little bit more about what is Whitehat Virtual Technologies? What do you guys do?
Sure. Whitehat Virtual Technologies is, I'll call us a technology services provider, which is really a take off of the MSP space, or managed service provider space. We started off with one employee, and you're looking at him. And we began with really kind of a little bit out of frustration in terms of being in the space and watching what customers were going through, needing technology, but not really understanding what they needed. They knew the outcome they needed, but they didn't know how to get there. And they were making a lot of purchases that they weren't getting the value out of. So for me, that was kind of the point of founding the company, was trying to address that particular problem. So I'll be honest, the toughest sale was to employee number 2, talking somebody else into joining this mess with me, and going after the work. So we started on the back of one project, and had to go find another project to keep the wheels turning. And fortunately, we've been doing that from then all the way to now, with give or take 50 people kind of scattered around the world. So not huge, but definitely a lot of lessons learned along the way. So where would you like me to go from there? I'll be happy to
No, you're good. So obviously I'm trying to think, it was something I saw Whitehat was saying 17, 18 something years now. So
we're nudging our 10th year in terms of business as Whitehat, but we've all been in this space for between 17 and 20 years, kind of in one form or another. That's really how we began. I guess digging into Whitehat specifically, the important part for us was, I guess if I'm looking at IT, and you've been in this space before, we in IT tend to talk about stuff, right? We don't talk about SANs and servers and storage and cables and blinky lights and all that stuff. And for me, I really didn't think that translated to the business, right? Nobody cares about that stuff. What you care about, and what I personally care about, and what we founded the company on, was the last 18 inches between the screen and the eyeballs of the employee. Because ultimately, if we're not crossing that divide between the monitor and the employee, then everything that's behind it is somewhat irrelevant. and I'll use an analogy which I use with business owners to help it resonate. But and that's really of a pencil. It takes 14 years to make a pencil, by the way, and I actually took time to figure this out. And I got there because roughly 108 years ago, high technology was a pencil with an eraser. That was the computer of its day. So by the time you grow the cedar tree to the proper diameter, cut it into blocks, put 5 slits in the block, make a sandwich, put in glue, put in the lead, glue it all up, chop it up, paint it, shape it, ferrule it, stamp it, package it, ship it, 14 years. And I'll take you back to your 6-year-old self when you had that pencil that was ridiculously oversized for your hand. The first time you go to write with a pencil, to probably your name, and the lead snaps, the last 1/4 inch between the pencil and the paper breaks, I mean, there goes your productivity tool, right? It's not a pencil anymore. Now it's a stick. And that's ultimately the analogy we use with IT. What that last 18 inches for us represents where that lead touches the paper. If the lead breaks, you got a whole bunch of IT stuff doing nothing. You'd be better off spending $3.49 on a big chief notepad and a number 2 pencil than you are the $1,000 you spend on the computer, Microsoft Word, and everything else to theoretically be more productive to for your employees. And so that's really where we began. How do we make sure that the money you're paying on the back end for all the boxes and wires actually translate into value on the front end for your business? And that was really kind of the founding idea. And from that, it took off from there.
Yeah, I love that idea because that's really, it definitely applies to technology. And like I said, I know where you're coming from that because most of the people, I did a lot of software work and stuff, and it's like they don't care about what language or what server it's running on or whatever. It's all about the user experience. So you look at that, but a general business experience, though, it doesn't matter how you're building your product, everything that goes into your product. It's what's the experience that the customer gets, what's the experience that even your employees get, kind of a thing there and working with you. So it's really about, everything should be more about, we say a lot of us, well, we're not in sales kind of thing. It's like, well, technically you really are. Everything is about sales, getting that experience, that time with that customer, that time with that client. So you versus with technology kind of a thing, that's a big key there. And realizing that has probably led to a lot of your success right there, just because so many technology firms are out there are selling the features of the piece of software, or selling the features, selling the blinking lights kind of a thing there. And nobody gets that. Nobody wants that kind of thing. It's like, it's cool walking in the big data center with all the big servers and all the blinking lights, but then you walk out and say, okay, that was cool. What's that going to do for me? And that's really where it comes down to, okay, what does it really deliver to your team and to your customers there? So that's great. So backing up a little bit before Whitehat, kind of what's your story? What got you into the entrepreneurial mindset to say, hey, I'm going to go start a new technology firm here?
Entrepreneurship for me has been a long road. My first little business was technically a lemonade stand. I had no supply cost. I was a quarter of glass, and that's where I first figured out that I could make something, not understanding what cost was necessarily, but then I could go at a rodeo arena. I could go sell lemonade at a quarter a cup and have a few bucks in my pocket to then go do what I wanted to do with. So honestly, and I still recall that very vividly. So many little businesses along the way. Ultimately, Whitehat was formed when a company I was working with decided they didn't want to be in Austin, Texas anymore, and they were abandoning their customers. So for me, I saw that as an opportunity to go back into entrepreneurship, which is what I wanted to do, and to take some of these kind of ideas, and again, some of the frustration I talked about when it started, of just not seeing customers taken care of the way I thought they should be, both being a business owner and being in the technology space. I saw a big gap between what companies wanted to do and then what they could do, because of a kind of a knowledge gap. They didn't know how to close that effectively without putting a lot of resources behind it. So that was the impetus. It worked out very well. We doubled up. We had a good first year. We doubled up year 2. We doubled up year 3. And we're headed that way to year 4. And then we smacked our heads squarely against a wall, and growth more or less stopped. And it really was a head scratcher. We weren't doing anything different. We weren't losing customers, but we didn't know how to grow any further than what we had. Anything else, we were kind of getting ahead of our skis. And so ultimately, working through that, what I figured out was we were burning our most important asset, our time. So anytime we needed to grow, we just put more hours in, and we just put more hours in, and we just put more hours in. Well, eventually we flat out ran out of hours. And we had to really kind of stop and soul search a little bit and figure out, okay, there's companies that get a lot larger than us, and they're not working 60 plus hours a week. It's a new company. You do what you have to do to get it done.
Yep.
But that wasn't sustainable. So for us, we really had to take a step back and look at how do we continue to grow in the face of we're out of time. And really, we got the answer looking at what we were doing for our customers. We were systematized and had processes in place to take care of our customers, which is how we were keeping them and keeping them happy. But we weren't really applying those systems to us. We were still running on personal heroics, where individual heroes saved the day, and we were continually having to save the day. But that was really what unlocked the next step for us, was figuring out how to get some basic processes in place for the things we were doing every day, so that we could continue to scale. And then I would say the next big lesson for us came around project management. Projects were a huge chunk of our business initially, and really still are, but a little bit less so in terms of revenue mix. But we ran into problems where our projects were being delivered, give or take 55% of the time, on time and on budget. We were missing, badly.
Yeah.
So that was another place we had to stop and say, okay, wait a minute. We're like a potato truck driving down the road, and we're losing more potatoes off the sides of the truck than are actually getting to the destination. So what are we doing? So we managed to go dig into Scrum and dig into a whole bunch of other technologies, theory of constraints, to ultimately identify how to solve that bottleneck, which really the problem was, it's kind of like a Tetris game. How do you take a couple of hundred customers that all want different projects, that all need different skill sets and different people to achieve those projects, and stick them all in the blender and not make anybody mad? So that was the riddle we had to solve. And so now we run about 95% on-time project completion percentage, which honestly gave us 40% more productivity. So gave us more resources effectively. Even though we're driving more projects, it gave us more resources to do those projects, cut our overall cost, and made us better. So those are kind of two of the really big hurdles from founding with one person to kind of where we are today. So different challenges today, but that's more or less what got us here.
No, it makes sense. And that's really where I see a lot of business owners, especially or smaller growing businesses, struggle, is that it's a completely different mindset when you're at 4 and 5 people, like you said, just doing everything through sheer willpower. Hey, we can push through this. And all of a sudden we get to 10, 15, 20 kind of employees, and it just doesn't work that way anymore. That you've got, I know, especially like I said, being in the tech realm, everything's about process, everything's about systems. You need checklists to say, okay, did we do all these steps in order to deliver this and deliver it the right way? And when you've got one technician doing it their way, one technician doing it a different way, and especially if you got somebody else having to come back in and pick up a project halfway through, it's like, what did they do? Have they done it all right? Kind of thing. It's a recipe for disaster right there. And probably, like you're saying, your project management rate or delivery rate is being a lot slower because you're having to go back and do rework or other things going on like that, just because there's not a standard way of doing things.
Right. That's it exactly. You get too big that the tribal knowledge in the office, you can't be enough places to have your fingers on it to make sure the standard stays the same. So the standards have to be in place when you can't be there. And then ultimately figure out you kind of get a life back too, because then you don't have to be there for the company to function. You can continue to grow and make sure that you're delivering the brand experience that your customers are paying for, right? I mean, why do we go to McDonald's? We go there not necessarily because it's the best burger we ever ate. We go there because the fries are going to taste the same at every one, no matter where you go. You want that taste. You want that consistency. And
Yeah.
that was the lesson for us, is how do we get consistent when the key founders aren't looking? How do we make sure that we're delivering the right experience? And that was kind of a big kind of light bulb moment for us to figure out.
So we probably kind of touched on it already, but looking at your specific role, because I know from being the IT person, you've got the whole alphabet soup of credentials and everything else following your name kind of a thing. So I'm assuming you started out, especially as the one person, being really hands-on, being involved in the actual implementation of technologies, knowing the systems, knowing how to troubleshoot and debug, whereas now you're at a 50-person CEO role. So what's the transition been like just in your own personal kind of journey over those 10 years of saying, okay, from technician to now being CEO?
Really, I didn't start on the technical side. I really started more as a technical salesperson. I would say my strength has been how do I listen to your problem as a business owner and then talk to a engineer and communicate that to the engineer and take the geek speak that comes from the engineer and translate that into English for the business owner. That's really been, I guess you'd call it, my superpower and kind of where we began. So ultimately figuring out the problem and then figuring out how to solve the problem where everybody could be on the same page. That's where I began. So my first sale to employee two, that was the engineer. That was the person who could turn the wrenches. But I would say that really it's been about, for me personally, growing and figuring out what roles to relinquish, where you're handling effectively everything, and relinquishing roles of finance or operations, or just the kind of the whole gamut there, figuring out when was time to hire somebody and delegate out functionality, and then figuring out how to manage those people to maintain expectations, and then when it was time to add more people and people under them. So that's been a piece that I had to learn personally. And now my role is really overseeing a team, and I've got a core group of managers and some VPs that handle a lot of the day-to-day. I'm still involved more heavily on the kind of the sales side and the business development side. It's just a piece I enjoy, as well as kind of on the business development side, really in terms of what are the technologies, what are the problems we're seeing from our customers, and then what are the technologies out there that solve them, that deliver real business value, and figuring out how to incorporate that and really get ahead of our customers a little bit. So once they're ready for it, we've already nailed down what the solution is and how it's going to work for their particular business. So that's really where my focus is now, where a lot of the other pieces have been handed off, some tougher than others, to be honest. But that's been my reality. So today it is still a growing lesson in terms of how to, less how to do the jobs and now more how to manage the people and shape the practices, and not get sucked into the minutia when there's a lot of other pieces I need to keep an eyeball on. I mean, the analogy I use is, initially, if you talk about a car, I was looking at the dash, my 8 or 10 metrics to figure out what's going on. But really my role is to look 200 yards at the edge of the headlights and to see where we're going and to make sure we don't hit a tree. And so I've had to really grow up and focus more on that end of the business and leave more of looking at the dash to the next tier that works around me and with me, so that we can continue to grow as a business. That's probably the best analogy I can give.
No, and that makes perfect sense and is really a key factor there, because I see too many. I was actually just reading a study the other day talking about earlier that was statistics wise saying that over 44% of entrepreneurs don't even have any kind of college degree in the first place. And even few of those are even focused on business. So we come in as a technology person, or we come in as a medical person, or whatever, we know our lane, but then figuring out, okay, how do I step away from day one being the one person that does everything, knows everything, to now being the CEO over 50 people, and I can't keep doing everything myself. So that ability to, like you're saying, step away and delegate, especially look out forward, because that's really the biggest key from a CEO perspective, is saying, okay, the vision, where are we going, kind of a thing there with that. So that's incredibly crucial right there, and very good, obviously, that you've made it through that and kind of adjusted with that, because it can be a tough challenge, like you said.
It was tough. I mean,
Yeah.
I won't sugarcoat it. I mean, I didn't just tap dance my way through all of that. There was some bloody noses and some black eyes along the way. Those aha moments, those very expensive moments that teach you your best lessons. I've learned more from the punches in the head I have taken in figuring things out than by the victories.
Yeah, and
So,
that's
but that's kind of how we've got here. But I wouldn't trade anything for it. I mean, those are hard fought lessons that are now baked into the DNA, and really that I enjoy sharing with other people. I don't do any official mentoring, but of the people that I work with, I'm trying to help them avoid some of the bear traps and potholes that I've stepped in, that I've paid dearly to figure out. So that's a piece that I enjoy, kind of giving back a little bit, and really hope I help somebody here as well. It's
yeah,
really a lot of this for me is to make sure that other people can learn from what I've done, both successfully and bad, to do better themselves.
yeah. I love the mentality and the attitude there. I was on somebody else's show a long time back that was asking me, okay, what regrets do you have about your previous journeys, previous experiences? It's like, I don't look at that as regrets. It was, yeah, there was obviously some challenges, some learning moments, but that's what I look at it as, is it's an opportunity to learn, an opportunity to grow at that point, because if everything was smooth, you probably wouldn't get to where you were today. So I love like I said, the mentality and just the realness there of saying, yeah, this is not, growing a company is not all nice, smooth growth here. There's going to be, like you said, ceilings. There's going to be things you're going to run into here. So it's not out there on your own for sure. So I know we kind of talked about this before, and obviously being recording this still on the tail end here of 2020, dealing with the pandemic, COVID, stuff like that. What kind of uh, obviously you said before you're already a virtual company. Everybody's used to working virtual and handling virtual technologies, et cetera. What kind of changes have you had to make directly in the company to kind of adapt or pivot, or obviously dealing with your clients? What kind of changes are you seeing going on with them in terms of a successful adaptation versus less than successful adaptation? What have you seen here for the last whatever 8 9 months we've been dealing with this mess?
Yeah, that's a big question. So I would say, uh, really helping customers. We represent customers across all sorts of industries, banking and healthcare probably primarily, but we have retail, engineering, manufacturing, and helping them figure out the shift in their business has really been a big part. So you've got banks that can't open lobbies. Okay, how do we function? Where do we put people? Uh, where the traditional reasons they bought some of the technologies we sell were to solve compliance problems and to make sure they had a handle on data to avoid regulatory constraints. Then uh, this happened, and now it's about survival. I mean, okay, regulatory, yes, I have to check that box, but we got to get out of bed and do something tomorrow and take care of people. How do we do that? And so that's been the biggest transition. Is we're not necessarily checking a box for our customers, or making sure we're ticking and tying everything. Retail, hospitality, engineering, it's been about survival for a lot of these companies. How do we change our business model quickly, in a way that we can still exist and serve our customers and help those that are struggling or in industries that aren't doing as well? How do we, one is how do we exist, and once they get to how do they continue to exist, then it gets, well, how do we take others with us? How do we make sure that our customers are taken care of so that they can continue to pay us so we can continue to exist and grow? That's been the biggest change. Less about uh, business in general, more about survival. And then once you get past survival, kind of how do we're all in this together. How do we go forward together has been the biggest piece. We are virtual. We do have a couple of offices, very sparsely populated, but we are scattered all around the globe. So fortunately, in terms of practical terms, our business didn't change much in terms of what we did on a day-to-day basis. Um, but that's been the the biggest change for our customers. And then I kind of alluded to it earlier, really getting into, once we've sent people home, how do we make them productive? I mean, so why are some companies productive when they send their employees home and some aren't? Um, Very good question. We figured out that if they worked in a collaborative role in their business and you sent them home, they were less productive. If they were lone wolves and used to being solo and you sent them home, in some cases, their productivity went up 15-20% because they didn't have other things in the office detracting them. So how do you deal with that? How do you build a collaboration platform when your business is built around being collaborative and around a table, how do you replicate that at home? So those are really how does your business work? And what do we need to replicate at home to keep that functionality in place, your culture, your way of working in place, so that you can continue to not only exist but be successful. And that's, I know I'm giving you a lot of answers, but
Yeah.
those are really kind of the important pieces that have really changed my perspective in terms of how we're approaching business with our customers this year.
No, it makes perfect sense, and I love the collaboration idea, because that's one that I've heard from a lot of people, is like, okay, we're used to getting together for meetings, getting together, coffee room, whatever, break room kind of a stuff. So I'd love to dive into that one. I don't know that we got time really to get down in the technology, but definitely point everybody to you, because I'm assuming you probably got at least some technology approaches to say, okay, this is how we can still replicate or try to recreate some of that collaboration around teams.
Well, we do. The important part really is to understand how your business functions. I mean, forget products and specifics in terms of us, but just in terms of business in general, where are your collaborative pieces and how are those people performing? And then what are you doing to replicate what you have in the office? Keeping those things in mind, because you don't think about it. Okay, go home and work. Okay, well, how did we work? You don't really stop and think about the mechanics of what people are doing on a day-to-day basis to get their jobs done. So taking some time to pay attention to the details of that really can go a long way to spotting the productivity problems you're creating by scattering people to the winds to try to keep them safe. I would say that's a good place to start. Certainly we've been down this road and we can help, but that's really a good place to start if I'm John Q, business owner out there trying to figure out how do I go forward and help my business.
Yeah. And I like the idea even more than that of saying, okay, take it out of the current context, but still saying, hey, you got to know your team. You got to know your people. It's not just a case of, hey, sit up here in the C-level suite kind of a thing, and you got a bunch of worker bees. If you really want that team unified and working together, whether now I've got to know them because I'm sending them home, or now I've just got to build a better environment kind of a thing. It really comes down to still being in touch and still knowing your team and knowing your people, what's going on, having the right people put together with the right seats, right environment, stuff like that.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
looking forward, put on your rose colored glasses here, kind of a thing, for the next 4 or 5 years. If
Where
you can,
are those? I know they're
yeah,
around here somewhere, right?
say if you have any chance at all of predicting technology that far, I know you pretty much can't. But what's the next 4 or 5 years look like for Whitehat, for your company here going forward, business wise?
What we're working on really is moving to more of a consumption model for IT for business. We've been working on it for a number of years. And really what I mean by that is today when companies, well, it's less so the last few years, but it's still true today. You're buying infrastructure, you're buying stuff, and you're capitalizing it over 5 years because it's going to run. So you kind of have to predict. You have to buy for now, but you have to predict into the future some number of years to work out depreciation and everything else. And really what we see happening and what we're trying to force is a move to consumption-based utilization for businesses, where be it on-prem infrastructure in the cloud, wherever it is, that you only pay for what you're using. If I've got 10 people using desktops, I don't want to buy servers and amortize them over 5 years and have a huge CapEx cost and suck all the cash flow out of my company. What I want to do is pay $100 a month for 15 desktops and call it a day. And then I hire more people, great. We transition some or do something else, then I can get that money back. That's really where IT is going in general, is kind of more to a consumption model. A good parallel to look at is kind of power plants. Years and years ago, when Edison and Tesla were roaming around, if you wanted power, you built your own plant. Now, you wouldn't think about building a power plant somewhere. You just go pay the bill, and somebody shows up, and there's a little meter spinning on the side of your building, and you pay for it. And ultimately, we see that is where IT will go. Not completely. I mean, at some point we'll be at grid computing, but really that's the model that we see working. Is you can tap in and leverage what you want and what you need for your business, and no more, and be able to get away. That's the first piece. The second piece is not having to have all the expertise in your barn to figure out how to run your business. The average business needs about, from an IT perspective, needs about 120 different skill sets. And then so the magic, even from our side as a service provider, is what is the fewest number of people we can hire of the right skill sets to have for our particular customers. Well, end customers are going through the same thing. So you're going to see that start to get easier. The smart brainiacs that get paid a lot are going to work for more and more consolidated companies from an IT perspective. And customers are going to be able to subscribe and get the services they need and not have to talk to 15 vendors and go through brain breaking exercises to figure out what to buy. So in short, it's going to get a lot easier to buy IT in the future, and you're not going to have as much risk of putting as much capital out there to try to build the infrastructure you need to do what you need to do. So I think those will be two big things that happen over the course of the next 5 years. And you see Amazon, you see Google Cloud, you see Azure. There's various other entities trying to pull that off. We do that as well, providing infrastructure completely on a subscription. You say what you need, we stack it all up, and you pay for what you use. So it's happening on a small scale with companies like us, and it's certainly happening on the global scale.
Yeah, I will say, just as a pitch, obviously, for your company kind of a thing right now, being in that realm, you can do a lot of it from a DIY kind of perspective of, like you said, Amazon's out there. There's pick your phone service out here, pick your email service out here, and you still end up with a whole bunch of different stuff you're trying to manage and piece together and integrate. Whereas dealing with an outsourced third party IT kind of something where you're already doing that integration and saying, okay, here's the turnkey solution for it is a huge difference. Because I know entrepreneurial kind of mindset, we want to save as much money, we want to keep things simple, but at the same time, by going out and trying to do, again, everything ourselves, we end up making it so much more complicated. So definitely like the mentality and the mindset and the approach you're taking with it there, because it's in some respects, IT is actually almost becoming, I'd say, a little bit too easy for everybody to try to go do it yourself, and it turns into a mess.
Yeah, you can spin yourself into a hole. I nobody starts a business to own IT stuff, right? You wanted to open a bakery and create the most beautiful cakes. You wanted to be the best consultant. You wanted to sell a lot of real estate. Nobody thought, man, I really want to own a bunch of computers. I really want printers that don't work from time to time. I want to have problems with Wi-Fi. That's not what anybody wants. And it's absurd to say as much, but really that's where we are from a technology perspective. Is, as a business owner, do you want to burn calories trying to figure out how to bolt all of these pieces together? Or do you want to go be the best baker? Do you want to go make the best car? Do you want to, service the best car? What do you want to do? Go do that and find somebody else that is going to be down in the engine room, keeping things working for you. You can't ignore it by any stretch, because every business is just about these days an IT business, but there's no reason that it has to consume ridiculous amount of your time and the average of 6% of your annual revenue for IT. You can stay focused about what you're passionate about and what you got into the business for, without having to just kill yourself with this IT stuff, which can be, life sucking for some people that they need it, but they don't want to deal with it, just like the other aspects of business.
Well, and that's really the key. I think that applies really across the business, and that's probably one of the best lessons to take out of this kind of stuff, is that you got to be able to focus on your expertise, focus on where you're best at, and either outsource to a third party company or bring in additional team kind of thing, grow and scale your team to say, hey, my role is not IT. I'm going to bring in an IT consultant. I'm going to bring in a company. My role is not finance. I'm going to bring in an accountant or something like that to be able to really true and grow the company. Because that's really where we look at and say, okay, that's where a lot of people get hamstrung and their business doesn't grow. And it hits that ceiling because, okay, we can't let go of those pieces and really focus on honestly what makes you happy. It's like, it's kind of a double-edged thing. It's like, okay, if you would just lose some of these, if you just let go of some of these pieces, you'd probably be a whole lot happier than you are right now, trying to hang on to and trying to juggle them all. So I definitely see that applying across the board, but yeah, especially in IT. So I hate to cut this short. We're actually running a little bit long normally, but tell us a little bit more about where, if they want to learn some more about virtual or Whitehat Virtual, I'm going to get this spelled out right here. Whitehat Virtual Technologies, where can they find you and get some more information there?
Whitehatvirtual.com is the easiest place to find us. And really, from that perspective, we help in a lot of different areas related to IT, but fundamentally it is making sure your end users are productive and teaching business owners what the levers are of IT. So, I mean, you understand basically how sales works, how finance work, how operations work. We want to provide that same kind of knowledge to the levers of IT. So if you are running it in-house, or if you outsourced it to somebody, you at least know how to control it and what the gauges are you need to look at to make sure you're getting the value out of it. But that's the best place to reach out and find us. And if I can be of any assistance, certainly the company and I can be found on LinkedIn. Be happy to help where I can. Again, help folks figure out how to in this day and age, how to exist and how to do better in their own business. And if it's if it profits Whitehat, awesome. But at the end of the day, it's as much about making sure that we all stay in business to win the day tomorrow than it is anything else. But I appreciate the time.
No, thank you very much. I appreciate the time. Enjoyed the conversation. And again, thanks for spending a few minutes with us today, so I can get it out straight. So thanks again, and hopefully we'll be talking to you again soon.
Would appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Building to Scale podcast. If you would like to share your entrepreneurial business growth story, please visit buildingtoscale.com/guest. If you got something out of this interview, would you do both us and our guest a favor and share it on your social media accounts? Don't forget to hit subscribe in your player so that you don't miss any future episodes, and make sure to reach out to Jeff Chastain on any of the major social media networks, or check us out at admentis.com.